everybody. Hello, and welcome to Monday afternoon and Bullies and Boundaries. Such a topic of discussion, right? So, I hope to introduce some new thoughts for you on how not only how to handle bullies, but how we unintentionally are letting them continue to affect us long after the relationship or the conversation or the incident. And really to be more aware of how pervasive bullying is and a little bit more about the bully side of things in some ways, because seeing it from that side and then realizing our part in it can help us. Because, for one thing, society is often about, hi, Christina, great to see you here today. Thank you. Society is often about, how do we stop the bullies? And it's also about how do we not let the bullies affect us, because we can empower ourselves much quicker than we can do something about them, what they're thinking, how they're acting. And if we understand a little bit more about them, it's helpful in the sense that bullies bullies are not powerful. If they were powerful, they wouldn't have to be bullies, right? If when we are really connected and in our power, and we know who we are and we are confident in ourselves, we have no need to bully anybody. And we don't even want to when we're truly in our power, because we understand, if I truly understand my worthiness, then I understand everybody is the same worthy as me. And my power is in just being who I am. Hey, Katie, great to see you here today. And so bullies are weak and they're looking for ways to get power. And unfortunately, um, they only know how to get power by being mean or saying mean. And the other thing is when they're jealous. So sometimes people are bullies because they're jealous of what other people have, but that again, they don't feel like they have the power to get it for themselves. So it still comes from a place of weakness. And so, one of the most empowering things we can do is really get comfortable and confident with who we are, so that if someone says, I don't like your clothes, I don't like the what you said, I don't it doesn't have to matter to us. Now, if you said something mean, of course you want to own that. That's not the same as when somebody is just criticizing who you are, what you wear, how you talk, what you want to do for a living, all the things that we see. And, bullies are everywhere. They're on social media. I mean, they're everywhere. They're everywhere that we have access to be able to communicate with people. And so, um, one of the things with bullies is sometimes they think the only way they can get their way is throwing their weight around. And I'll give you a real life a work example, because I had this happen at a place I was working at. And if you have any specific encounters with a bully or an ongoing encounter that you would like some tips on, please feel free to put it in the comments. And that's the beauty of getting to be on here live. But a client came in. Apparently, they came in the day before I was there, and before they even took the patient in, they were threatening to sue him if anything happened to the patient. It was a sick dog, for sure, and it definitely needed hospitalization and treatment. It was not dying, but just to get through, to get the paperwork, she was so mean, and so everything sent her off the deep end. When you leave your baby at an ER, if they have to be hospitalized, they have to have what's called a DNR. So they have to know if you would want to do CPR, if something was happening or not. They have to have that signed paper, same as in a hospital. That sent her off the deep end. And then she was threatening to sue him if anything were going to happen to her baby. And, 3 different employees had to deal with her. And it was so complicated and for whatever reason, they picked me as a dog. I have only worked a few shifts there. So I was a little surprised to find this out. But the point is that I ended up being able to do some things. I had challenging conversations with her, but I was able to set clear boundaries. Ma'am, I don't have time to talk about this. We need to talk, because she went off on a tirade. And then luckily, I was able to get the animal well enough that we could get it out of there on my shift. In the conversation, when I went to discharge the patient, which is normally a technician's job, but she had been horrible to the staff and was more respectful to the doctors. So I discharged the patient. she was going through chemotherapy. Her husband had Alzheimer's. She had some rough things going on. So I can have compassion for them. We can have compassion for bullies, but that doesn't mean it's okay to have someone come into your practice and be yelling at staff and take 2 hours to deal with for a very, you know, not terribly sick while other patients are waiting and suffering and you've got staff in tears. So you can have compassion for people and still have to have a line that, that and it's different if somebody has a moment, they're upset, they adore their, we have this happen all the time in ERs, and they yell and then they apologize. That's completely different than someone who doesn't apologize for their behavior and continues to bully any and everyone that they come in contact with. So I'm sure we've all had moments when we really love our pets or when we are having a stressful moment about something going on in our house. But it's different. You're not really a bully if you lose it and you yell, but then you're like, I'm so sorry. I let my emotions get ahead of me. I know you're doing a good job. All those things. Of course, we'd rather not lose it and not have to apologize and handle it appropriately. And, you know, but when we do, that's a different conversation. A true bully doesn't ever back down. And they always have an excuse, but it doesn't come with an apology, right? And that's a very, very big difference. Um, and so um, Christina says, if I think about the happiest, most successful people I know, they're all really kind and respectful to others. Being a bully doesn't, yes, it doesn't. So here's one of the keys to remember with bullies. They're creating their own hell on earth, right? If somebody goes in the hospital and they're mean to the hospital staff, are they getting the best care? No, because people are arguing over going in there. Like, for instance, even with this woman, her pet will be fine, but I chose the medications based on what I thought I would be able to have a conversation with her a bit and what I wouldn't. Knowing not anything that would compromise the patient's health, but there was just a certain place where I was like, it's not going to go well to even try to have that conversation, and this will work well enough. So this is what we're going to do. Well, that applies everywhere. You don't get the best service when you're mean. And sometimes there are people that can learn that, but there are people in life, the way I look at it, and everybody has their own way of looking at it, you just have to remember, if you're angry at the bully, if your feelings are hurt from the bully, if you're in that space, the bully still has control of you, right? It's controlling your ability to be happy and joyful and live the life you are meant to live. So if you don't want the bully to have control, we have to find ways to let go of that. For me, I look at it as people didn't come from a beautiful, happy, fantastic, amazing, perfect place and become bullies because there wouldn't be any reason to. They have suffered and they're struggling. And the ways they've gone about trying to handle it aren't really helpful to them, which is sad. But also, hello, Kate. Thanks for joining us. Also, I can have compassion for them at the fact that they're making their life a lot harder. I don't have, exactly, Christina, hurt people hurt people. But I don't have to participate. I don't have to get my feelings hurt. I don't have to take it personal. That's a big thing. If I don't take it personal, and we have bullies that are family members, we have a harder time not taking it personal. But again, Kate says, is there a way to help the bully if they are suffering? So the challenge here in even helping people that are bullied, we can only truly be responsible for ourselves, right? I'm here, I give out what I do, I participate because I love and want to give other people tips that they can figure out and use to help themselves. I just don't have control of how they use it or if they use it, right? So the same thing for the bully, in that I can be kind, I can be compassionate. And by kind and compassionate, I does not mean you're welcome to come back in. Maybe sometimes it's a wake-up call. I mean, I've had it before where I had a client that was a bully in my practice, and I thought, well, I fired him. I'm like, I'm sorry, but I can't have you coming into the clinic and talking to my staff the way you talk to my staff. And so you're obviously not happy here. We're always trying to do our best. We get really stressed if our best is never good enough. So we will be happy to send your records wherever you would like to go. I had a couple of those clients come back and apologize profusely and say, we were doing the best job. I was their favorite vet. They didn't want to go somewhere else. But I made it very clear, if that behavior happened again, they would never be able to come back. And it never happened again. So there were two clients that, because I didn't fire very many over 22 years, that when that came down, and there was one client that begged to come back, but he had been really awful to a receptionist. Once I knew what was going on, And so I told him I couldn't take him back unless she was okay with that. And she was like, "Well, I can go in the back when he comes in the door." And I'm like, "Absolutely not. If that is how what he has done has made you feel, then he is not welcome to come back." So maybe that he learned a lesson from that. I don't know, but I know that I protected my space whenever um, well, I felt terrible, Kate, that I didn't realize ahead of time how mean he was being to her. I just happened to be up front one day when some of it went down, and then I asked her about it, and then she started telling me stuff because he didn't act that way to the technicians, only to the receptionist. And so once I knew that, I was like, oh, she'd been with me years. She was really good. And he was only mad at her because she was setting boundaries or the rules that we had in place. They were my rules, they were the clinic rules. Um, and so, yeah, exactly, exactly. But that's what bullies will do sometimes. Like the reason I discharged the patient Saturday was because she was less mean to the, she did try to run over me a little bit, but when I set the boundaries, she knew I meant it. My staff didn't have that power. Like they, she's not going to respect them. So it doesn't matter what they say, she's still going to be mean. And so I was like, no, you're not going to go in and discharge this patient because, and that makes somebody else wait. But I still have to protect my staff. They still matter to me. They're really good doing a hard job in a hard place to do a job. And they don't need to take stuff from people that there's no reason to. Um, yeah. And you have to keep your sense of humor. What was funny about that with the receptionist, I felt bad that I asked her because at the time I thought, well, maybe I should have just, fired him and not given him an option. You know what? She felt so empowered that I went and asked her. And when she said I wouldn't be comfortable with that, then I said, then that's the rule. Then there's no way he's coming back in the door. So I gave her power that she didn't have before that. So that was a huge awareness for me too, right? Anytime we can give them back their power, which is the goal, when you go to, protect them, is I don't want to put them in a place where they're powerless. That's a terrible place to be. And all of us have had at some point in our lives encounters with bullies in a situation where we didn't have the power in that moment. The hard part about that is when we have the hardest time because you feel like a victim, letting go of it. Because if you're a victim, you're not in control of your life. They still have power over you. And so we have to find a way to take that power back for ourselves, whether that's forgiveness, but sometimes that feels terrible because what happened was really mean. And that's where Swift says you don't have to forgive to move on. You don't, but you do have to let go of the anger. If you still have anger or hurt in you, they still have power over your life because you're attracting from that victim place. Christina says, I think that's an awesome policy. Oh, yes. I think it goes a long way when your staff know. Yes, it does. Not taking abusive behavior from clients. It absolutely does. And that's one of the reasons I like that clinic because I know they have that policy as well. And I contacted management during the day when that was going down. And while I had permission to fire the client, it's best for the clinic if we don't create it. If I could get the patient out healthy, well, go home and then they send the firing letter. That's the best case scenario. And so it's less distraction at work, it's less other people involved. So that's what I was able to accomplish and still keep my boundaries because I could set them kindly but firmly in a way that she didn't feel safe to cross them. So that's what I did. And I was still kind to her about her, she told me a little about her cancer and that sort of stuff. And I could be gracious about that, go over the meds with her and, get her out the door. What are the main elements of that's a very good question, Kate. So the main elements of setting good boundaries, one, you've got to have, and this is where we can work on it through, through appreciation and the reframe game. And also we do have a new boundaries workshop that we can drop in the comments for you. Because part of setting boundaries is having confidence enough in yourself and knowing who you are so that you are good with, that's not okay, this is okay. Christina says, is there advice you have for not taking things bullies say personally? Ooh. Well, so the more you work on your self-confidence, the more the sensitivity will ease up for you. Because as you become truly aware of your worthiness and that you are, this is one thing where, and something we can do with everyone around us. Think it in your head when you don't have people you can say it to. Every person you meet, every person you talk to, think, hello, my name is Christina Williams and my needs are as important as yours. Hello, I am Kate Butler and it's so nice to meet you. My needs are as important as yours. And you, in your mind, you're saying that same thing back from the other person, whoever you're meeting. Hello, I'm so and so, and my needs are as important as yours. What that means, the bully crosses the boundaries into your space, right? And so if you're aware that your needs, in other words, my need to be, I don't want to doctor a patient that the client is threatening me all the time. I clearly said to her when she said, well, if my patient is not well in 12 hours, I'm going to come pick the dog up and take it to this other clinic. And I said, you know what? You are welcome to come and pick up your patient at any time if you feel that way. And I can promise you that they are not going to guarantee that your patient is going to be well in 12 hours either. But you're more than welcome to come. So my clear boundary is you're threatening me if I don't heal your patient a certain amount of time. That's not how medicine works. So I'm going to call you on it and I'm going to suggest you come pick up your pet. Do you think she took me up on that? No, because that's not what she wanted. She wanted to bully me into getting what she wanted. Um, at another point in time, she wanted me to go through the entire invoice from when the patient first got there, which was way before me, and tell her detail by detail what the patient had. And I told her, absolutely not. I'm a doctor. I have other patients to see. I have your patient to take care of, which is not happening while I'm on the phone with you. So this is not going to happen. I've already told you what med she's on, what med I need to add. You can choose whether you say yes or no, and then we go from there. And she she gave me permission. Then she told me, I've been a business owner and I have the right to ask for this. I never responded to that. And she managed to be somewhat polite and huffy and get off the phone. We took care of her pet. I texted her when the pet was doing better because I didn't want to have another phone call with her. Why would I go down that path again? Is there advice you have for not taking bullies personally? Yeah, okay. I thought I saw another one on there. So, yeah, so when you don't take it personally, you can stay in line of what do I need to do next? So, I guess what I would say is maybe one of the things is whether somebody's a bully or not. Plenty of people, we talked about unsolicited advice is criticism. Plenty of people who are trying to be, they think they're doing the right thing. They're trying to be kind. And listen, we've all done it. I still do it sometimes and then catch myself, right? That give you advice and you didn't ask for it. But if somebody does that to me, I can say, well, they're doing their best to give me information. If I don't take it personal, I can decide, is this useful information or not? So I think with every conversation, anything, nothing is really personal because people are coming at you from their own perspective, from the womb on. Every pain point they've had, every challenge that they've ever had is in how they see whatever you say. So nothing is really ever personal from anybody. When we take it personal, it's a matter of us not feeling as worthy as we are. And so if we can start to separate that, if you can even tell yourself, over and over, wow, even if that felt like it was personal, it's not. They're coming from a different perspective. So what's my perspective? Because your perspective is just as important. And when we take it personally, we've alleviated, we're not respecting ourselves and ourselves and our value. I know that's been true for me. And I know that my ex was definitely a bully, and he had power over me for almost 15 years. Because I was trying to please. I was trying to make him happy. I didn't have that self-worth. And so he was able to say really mean things. And I just tried to pretend he didn't really mean that, or all these other things you tell yourself. So you want to stop telling yourself all of that. When people show you who they are, as Maya Angelou says, believe them. And it's, yes. So that's a complicated question, Kate. We do to a certain extent. I will say, yes, I attracted it because I was in the space of not valuing myself, of my voice in my head. Here's a powerful one. The voice in my head was so negative that when other people were negative to me, it wasn't worse than the way I talked to myself. So that's when you attract bullies. So that's an important part about doing the appreciation and the appreciation journal that I have. It's a specific way to learn to appreciate yourself and everything around you, and start focusing on the positive and the positive in you, because then you'll hear that negative voice. And when you hear that negative voice and you start to change your own negative voice, I didn't notice how mean my husband was so much. I mean, I did obviously obviously we had arguments, but I didn't truly realize it and didn't start having boundaries until I started working on myself enough to hear my own negative voice. And then I started to realize, at one point I thought he just got meaner, and that's how I recognized it. And I realized, no, I got stronger. I got more confident. And when I got more confident, I realized how mean he was. Right? But I still remember the first time, which was months after I left him, when I finally was powerful enough to really stand up to him. But I literally dropped my daughter off at school first, pulled over in a parking lot. I didn't even want to be at work. I didn't want to be where anybody was. Sat in my car to make the phone call to tell him he could not set foot on my property anymore. And I was shaking. He didn't know that. Thankfully, he couldn't hear it in my voice. And he tried to bully me. I knew he would. But at that point, I had enough power not to let that happen and to be able to throw it back at him and maintain. And do you know how powerful that was? That was the first time that he no longer had power over me, for sure. It wasn't even when I first walked out the door. It wasn't. This was probably 6 months, 5, 6 months after the divorce was final. And I never looked back after that, as far as my power in that situation. I texted him. I didn't talk to him on the phone at all. And, that was probably in May. Within another 6 months, my daughter quit speaking to him. And then I didn't ask for any money. So I didn't have to deal with him at all, which was huge. Money was not more important than taking my power back. I wouldn't have gotten it anyway. But if there would have been more ability to lie, so many things. That took away. And something we have to remember is, how do I get my power back? What's most important in this? Sometimes it's not money. Sometimes it's your power, because you can attract money if you're not in that negative victim space. You don't attract money from a victim space. So that's another powerful perspective, and why we don't want bullies to still have power over us, and we want to find some way to let go of that. It took me a while to let go, obviously, of the anger. It helped that I took responsibility for my part, because part of our anger is blaming them. Well, I married him. I made that choice. I picked him. I was in that space. That was not him. I mean, I could have not picked him. And so, owning your part is really important, because how you grow and change, and how you're never that person, even if you've had moments where you didn't know and maybe you operated from that space. If you're a person who looks in the mirror and cares about other people, you're not going to stay in that space, and you're going to grow from it. Christina, I want to know if I gave you something that was helpful to you in terms of not taking things bullies say personally. Really, it's also about not taking things anyone says personally. And sometimes, we all have those moments, a weak moment when you might be like, ooh. And then you have to go back and reevaluate and go, okay, I have to take it with a grain of salt. And then, if there is something that I need to fix, I don't have to be hurt about it. I can be like, oh, wow, It's the same way when you're working on yourself and you're trying to set boundaries. And I say, be curious, instead of, we get so mad at ourselves. We beat up on ourselves, which is so unhelpful. And it's a powerless place to be. So if we could be curious about it, well, that conversation didn't go well. How could I approach that differently? What did I say that seemed to trigger, or what was unproductive in that conversation when you're, like when you're trying to set boundaries and it's not working. And so in the same way, when we are talking to bullies, like, wonder what their motivation is. What would they gain if I believe this? What kind of power, what is he or she trying to gain from this? Do they just want to, if it's in a teenage setting, maybe they just want to bully you about your clothes. if somebody is criticizing your looks or your clothes or your, then there's something that they don't feel good about in themselves that they're choosing to lash out at somebody else about. And all of us are beautiful inside and out, regardless of our size, our clothes, our hair. None of that matters in terms of who you are, right? And your right to be exactly who you are. And so, if anybody is bullying you in that sense, or bullying you in terms of you should be living life differently, well, you get to do you. You get to dress how you want. You get to be who you want. You get to be friends with who you want, talk to who you want, live, in the best place that you can, and vision more and create more. You get to choose who's around you and who's not. But you want to do it not out of anger, because they still own you if it's out of anger. You want to do it with kindness. If they're in that angry space and you don't want to be in that angry space, you just kindly say, gosh, I wish, in your mind, even if you have to say something different to them, I wish you the best. I just don't want to exist in this space where when I'm around you, every conversation is difficult. And I'm going to give myself the peace of not doing that. Um, and as you start to own that, just that much, and then you choose to be in spaces where people are kind, and you look for spaces where people are kind, and you believe you're worthy of being in spaces where people are kind, and you're kind back, but they're kind to you. If you're kind to someone and they're not kind to you, you don't have to stay in that space. But when we don't take it personal, sometimes we find out they were just having a bad moment. If I can stay happy, I don't need you to be happy for me to be happy, then I can be compassionate to you and still be happy. And now you can't affect me. You're bullying me because you're having a bad day and I don't want to participate in the bad day moment. I just ignore you. I go somewhere else. I do my thing. And if you need me for your work, you're going to have to come and approach me. And if you're approaching me in a mean way, I'll say, I'll be happy to have that conversation when you're in a space where we can have, a polite conversation. I'm not feeling that right now. If they need your work before the end of the day, they're going to have to figure out how they're going to approach you, right? So those are the places that we want to work on getting to be. And it's about realizing that you're worthy of not being. I mean, I remember having employees that were yelling at me. I remember at one point thinking, why am I allowing this? Is this employee's yelling at me many, many, many years ago? Gradually through, my business probably saved my life because it allowed me to grow in a way that allowed me to get strong enough to realize what I was living with at home, and ultimately realize, what other people in my house were living, and make a choice to leave. So it's a gradual process. So also be kind to yourself if it takes you a while to really, I mean, I told you the length of time, in dealing with the bully that I married. And so, once you take their power, they're done. Like, like even in that situation yesterday, I knew I had the upper hand the whole time, but it has been a journey for me. And the clinic did help me with that because I didn't want to allow my employees to be bullied. So I was able to stand up for them when I still wasn't standing up for myself in other spaces. But that's how I learned to stand up for myself. So it's definitely a journey. Be kind to yourself on the journey, because it is really so much more fun. And we didn't have a whole lot of conversation when that was all said and done because it didn't have to. I didn't take it personal. But if I'd have sent an employee there and she spent 30 minutes berating them, and then I would have had to go in there, then the whole clinic would have been talking about it, would have taken away from our ability to take good care of all the patients we had. And some people would have left having had a terrible day, which is what had happened the previous day, and which is what I wanted to avoid, and I've come a long way in my journey to know that I've only been there a few shifts, and they knew that I was somebody that could handle that because, there was certainly a time in my life that was not necessarily true. So I appreciate the journey, and I'm just grateful that I get to be here, that I didn't have to spend my whole life not knowing, not being where I am now, right? That I got to take the journey to here, and that's what I want to share with you guys. So I hope you have an amazing rest of your Monday. I will be out of the country next week, so there will not be a 2 p.m. Uh, live next week for anybody joining now or later, because I will be in Fiji scuba diving. But we will be back the next week, and I can't wait to see you because we always have wonderful things to share. And I love you guys all so very much. And I can't wait to see you guys. Thank you, Christina. Yay. I'm happy that helped you. Um, Christina says it took me almost 40 to get to a place where I at least recognize that I have a choice to not care about what bullies think. Yes, absolutely. Well, you guys have a fantastic day, and I will see you in 2 weeks. And have a wonderful week. And love you guys so much. Thank you.